When the KPIs are closed, but your soul isn't. The story of Comet K. How to burn out with style, quit with grace, and regret absolutely nothing. Chapter 1, Friday. I found out on a Friday. Of course, it was Friday. All the life-altering things happen either on a Monday morning or late Friday. Just in time to make sure you have no chance to process them properly. It was 5 o'clock. In our glass-walled conference room, champagne flutes clinked and corporate voices danced their rehearsed rhythms. Next to me stood Elodie, fresh haircut, sharp white blazer, not a thread out of place. Her Cartier watch glittered on her wrist like a tiny, passive-aggressive insult. Effective immediately, Elodie is being appointed regional director, announced Gerard. His voice trembled slightly, maybe because of the champagne, or maybe from the awareness that he'd just driven a sword straight between my shoulder blades. I smiled, coldly. The kind of smile you wear in Alsace in winter, when your breath fogs in the air, but your insides are all one question. Why? They used to call me the department's rising star. 60-hour weeks, launching teams in 3 countries. I turned down a marriage proposal in Prague, skipped my father's birthday, missed my mom's ragu and her couch blanket chats. The last letter from my grandmother came in March. I found it after her funeral, folded neatly in 4, hidden in the drawer of her old dresser, with her wedding ring tucked inside. My dear, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get to hug you one last time. But know this, I've loved you since the first moment I saw you, and I've always understood your choices. Just promise me, live not just for your work, live for yourself too. And let this ring remind you, being loved is not a weakness. I read it on my kitchen floor, sitting on the cold tile, hugging my knees. Hot tears fell onto the paper. Outside, the Paris evening quietly faded, but back on that Friday, I stood tall. My lips pulled politely upward, word by word, toast by toast. Gerard glanced at me, brief, tense, like you'd glance at a bomb whose timer just stopped ticking. Camille, you're absolutely irreplaceable, he muttered later by the coffee machine. But surely you understand. The company is investing in younger, more flexible talent. Of course, I said, and for the first time in my life, I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, just emptiness. Like that last breath that turns out to be the final one. Elodie was making the rounds, offering congratulations, chirping. Her perfume reminded me of the jasmine by my grandmother's porch. Everything spun. Only Margarita, my quiet, clever colleague, came close. You're handling this so French, like Madame de Sévigné. I gave a small laugh. Something flickered inside me, but I crushed it, like I always did. On my way out, I picked up a glass of champagne. My eyes drifted across the room. Same walls, same furniture, same faces. But I wasn't me anymore. I took a sip. The champagne scorched my throat. It was bitter, like betrayal. Chapter 2. 100-year story. 3 years. Or 100. Sometimes I think I've spent more of my life inside those office walls than in my own apartment. My desk was by the window, where the setting sun would slice the skyline between the towers of La Défense. Day in, day out. Spreadsheets, calls, deadlines. I lived for work the way others lived for Friday wine. Only my bottle never ran out. I remember how it all began. A tiny open space, just 6 of us. I believed in the idea, in the team, in the dream. We drank cheap wine from plastic cups, ate pizza straight off the box lids, and worked past midnight with that hungry gleam in our eyes. Back then, I was dating Laurent. He loved books, opera, and me. He used to say I was his Piaf in the digital age. One night in Prague, snow falling, lampposts glowing. He pulled out a ring and asked me to marry him. And I felt only fear. "I'm sorry," I told him. "I can't stop now." He didn't argue, he just stepped back. And then he waited. A long time, maybe too long. That same year, I got pregnant. It was December. I found out on the metro, holding the test strip between the pages of a report. At the time, we were in the middle of a major German project. The deadlines were imploding, and I thought, if I say pause now, everything will collapse. So I didn't. I booked the appointment, did everything myself. Then went straight to the office. Smiled. Later, I passed out in the bathroom. No one noticed? I splashed water on my face, pulled my hair back, and ran a Zoom meeting like nothing had happened. Then came the months. Heavy ones, thick like fabric stitched together from my nerves. I led the department, managed budgets, cut the excess, trained newcomers. People believed in me, or used me, which honestly is often the same thing. A year ago, my grandmother passed. It was June. The heat was just beginning to settle over Paris. I didn't make it in time. I called, but she was already too weak to speak. The last time I heard her voice was in May. She said, "You're like Joan of Arc, my girl. Just don't come back for love too late." I went to the funeral alone, wearing a white blouse I'd spilled coffee on during the train ride. I didn't cry at the cemetery. I cried in the forest, where we used to collect chestnuts together. After that, I shut down. Not because it hurt. I'd long made peace with pain. But because I no longer knew why I was doing all this. "Dad?" I asked once on the phone. "Do you miss her?" He paused for a few seconds. "Every night, Camille. But you know, the day you were born, I realized the women in our family. They walk through storms. You're no different." I didn't answer. I just listened, as if somehow, on the other end of the line, it was Grandma's voice again. Gerard noticed something had shifted. One day in a morning meeting, he said, "Camille, you've gotten heavy. You used to fly." I smiled. My wings got a little scorched. "Gerard, it happens." That night, I came home and pulled out Grandma's letter. Again, the paper was already crumpled from tears. The ring lay cold in my palm. I put it on, just to remember I too was once loved. Chapter 3. Even the Walls Have Ears. They say walls don't listen, but some walls have a paper-thin soul. It happened on a Tuesday. I stayed behind for a late lunch. My head was buzzing from endless approvals, and all I wanted was 5 minutes of quiet. The cafeteria was nearly empty. Only next door, the meeting room with those famously thin walls, I heard voices. I recognized Gerard's laugh. The second voice? Elodie's. At first, I was going to leave, but their voices had that sticky quality, the kind forbidden fruit tends to have. So I stayed. The plate in front of me remained untouched. "Camille?" Gerard chuckled. "She's predictable, reliable. She has no plan B. She lives for work. She's simple. We knew she wouldn't blow up. She's like good accounting, dry, quiet, convenient." The glass of water in my hand trembled. But I didn't move. Only under the table, I slowly turned the ring on my finger. Once, twice. The metal was cold, like those words. "You sure you're up for it?" he continued. "Managing a department isn't a slide, it's people. Camille was like a mother figure to them. A bit tough, sure, but stable." "I've got this," Elodie replied. "Camille's just old school. It's a new era now. People want vibe, not leadership. You get it, right?" I closed my eyes, inhaled slowly, exhaled slower. My head was still buzzing, but now from something else entirely. Too old school, too predictable, too Convenient. I thought of Laurent. That night, when he finally said, "Camille, I can't keep waiting. Please don't come back. I can't do this anymore." I didn't cry. I just walked out and caught a train. 2 hours later, I delivered a presentation. I thought of that morning after the clinic, standing alone in the shower, cotton in my ears, pain in my stomach. I remember thinking, if I close my eyes and take one step, maybe I'll vanish. I didn't. I went to work. Too stable? I thought of all those nights I came home to a laptop, not a life. Of those rare calls from Mom. "Camille, we miss you. Come over. We won't talk, we'll just eat. Just be here." And I'd say, "Soon," but I never came. Too reliable. I opened my eyes. Same room, same people, same world. Only I was different now. I stood up, put the glass back down, wiped away the condensation with a napkin, as if nothing had happened. Then I walked to my desk, turned on my laptop, sat down, pretended to work. There were numbers on the screen. There was nothing in my head. And on my hand, the ring. I spun it again, not for comfort, just to keep from screaming. Chapter 4. The Letter That Says It All. I typed the letter on a Saturday. No heading, no farewell, just facts, calmly, almost like an accountant's report. "Please consider this document as an official notice of termination of employment as of April 15th. Thank you for the opportunity for professional growth. Sincerely, Camille Reno." I read it 4 times, didn't change a word. The letter was white, no blood, no tears, no accusations, clean. Like the tablecloth just after everything you didn't want has been cleared away. I sent it at 8:01 a.m. on Monday. Exactly. Coolly. 2 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Gerard, work. Incoming call. I looked at the screen like it was someone else's passport. I didn't answer. Not the call, not the second. Not the email titled, "Urgent, we need to discuss." Everything had already been said. Still, I went into the office. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to look in the eyes of the place where I once believed I could be honest and needed at the same time. When I walked in, the silence was almost theatrical. Colleagues glanced at each other. Somebody turned away. Elodie pretended to be busy with a slide. Margarita stared into her coffee cup, like she were trying to read what was happening in the foam. Somewhere around noon, Gerard approached. "Camille, what does this mean?" I lifted my gaze. Calmly, almost friendly. "It means you were right. I've said I really had no other option, except one." "Are you upset?" "No, I just stopped playing the game where everyone knew the rules except me." He looked at me like someone who can no longer control a person. Not by manipulation, not by fake concern, not by salary. "I hoped you'd stay. That you would understand. It's not about you. It's business. And I hoped you'd say, 'We're sorry. You mattered. But we both got less than we wanted.'" I smiled. For real. With that light kind of tiredness that comes after a long journey. "Thanks for the experience," I said. "It might come in handy." I turned and walked toward the elevator. At that moment, the ring on my finger slid slightly. With my thumb, I caught it and slowly rotated it. Once. Done. Chapter 5. New Again. I barely remember my first week in the new company. It was like the aftermath of a fire, smoke in my head, the smell of unfamiliar furniture, faces that smiled too long. I was the new girl again. Weird. After 10 years in one place, to start everything from scratch. But the weirdness brought relief. Like ice-cold water in a heat wave. First it stings, then it awakens. The company was different. No gloss, no pretense. Here, People didn't try to impress. They just worked. And, what surprised me? They listened. From day one. Not as a woman, not as a threat, but as a professional. I suggested we rethink one of the processes in the sales department. A week later, the manager said, "You saved us that contract. Why didn't you come sooner?" I smiled, silently, because explaining the past is like trying to fix a clock that stopped long ago. In week 2, I ran into Laurent. He stood in front of a bookshelf in a little Montmartre shop. It was evening. I was waiting for a client meeting and had ducked in to warm up. He turned. He saw me, and wasn't surprised. As though we hadn't ever parted. As though this was just a long pause between talks. "Camille," he said. Simply, with the same voice, only quieter. Laurent? He was a little older, but handsome. Confident, yet gentle. He had lines at the corners of his eyes and a ring on his finger. "How are you?" "I'm alive. I'm working. I'm trying to sleep." He smiled. "Same you, only slower. And warmer." We stepped outside. We walked. No destination. He talked about his new project, now in an ed-tech startup. His wife, a former coworker. They have a daughter, 4 years old. "Her name's Anna," he said. "She smells like vanilla and says 'daddy' 100 times a day." I listened, and I didn't envy, and I didn't regret. But something skipped inside me, like an old melody you once knew, but no longer sing. "I loved you," he said all of a sudden. "For a long time. Longer than it was worth." "I know," I answered. "Thank you." "I thought you'd come back. Then I realized you never left. You were just moving forward, always forward. Even away from us." We sat on a bench, silence between us. The night was soft, like wool. My fingers froze, and I started turning the ring again. He noticed. "What's that?" "A gift, a reminder. Not about me, about her." He nodded. Understood. No questions. "If we met now," he began. "We still wouldn't stay," I finished, "because now we're different." He smiled, warm, sad, like an old friend who no longer needs a mask. "Take care, Camille." "You too." We hugged. No promises. No, "let's write," or "let's call." Just memory and a gentle quiet. Chapter 6. News with morning coffee. Sometimes, revenge arrives in the form of a newsletter, or, say, a headline. Group morale loses key clients in B2B sector. I saw it over my morning coffee, skimming through my inbox. Nothing dramatic, just numbers, market share dropping, analyst comments. But between the lines, silence. The kind that drowns a captain clinging to his binoculars like a life preserver. Later that day, Margarita called. Her voice was thin, stretched like old violin strings. "Everything's falling apart. Elodie can't handle it. Girard's pretending it's all under control, but even marketing is checking job boards. You wouldn't happen to have a spot?" I remembered how Margarita used to bring me tea when I stayed at the office past 9. How she once closed the window behind me because I had a cold. How she stood silently beside me the night the world felt like it might split in half. "I do," I said. "We have an opening, senior project coordinator. It's perfect for you." She was quiet, then said, "Thank you, but you know I'm not your friend. You're someone I trust. That's enough." There was a pause on the line. Just her breathing. And a faint sound in the background. Maybe a window opening. Maybe a tram passing. "So now you're the one saving people," she said eventually. Her voice had a dry smile in it, but also exhaustion. "Didn't think I'd live to see the day." "Me neither," I laughed. "But here we are. We agreed to meet in 2 days. I sent her everything, the resume form, the HR contact, not for protocol, because I wanted at least one more person to make it out. That evening, I came home. opened the door, and there he was. Green eyes, sharp stare, just a hint of disapproval. I'd named the cat Hugo. He'd appeared in my life by accident. I found him shivering under a bench outside the metro. He didn't purr. He stared like a war veteran who'd seen 3 lifetimes. Now he waited for me at the door. Every evening. No drama, no fireworks, just present. Like proof, I still returned. I stroked him behind the ears. He snorted and hopped onto the windowsill as if to say, "I'm glad you're back, but I don't need this. It's just nice." On nights like that, I felt seen. Felt like I didn't vanish into the void. A week later, another former colleague messaged me. Then a second. I passed along contacts, gave recommendations. No speeches, no, see what you've lost. Meanwhile, Girard went live on LinkedIn to reassure investors. Comments were turned off. The stock price wasn't. Group morale was sinking, and I wasn't. At one point, I even felt sorry for them. But it passed. Quickly, like a rainstorm over Montmartre, sudden, sharp, and gone. I poured a glass of wine, sank into the sofa. Hugo curled up beside me, not touching, just there. And that was enough. Chapter 7. Comet K. The phone rang just as I was picking out a dress. I've always hated corporate events, especially the kind held in old mansions with gilded ceilings and champagne that costs more than shoes. But I was invited, and I had to go. Not out of spite, out of respect, for myself. The screen lit up. Dad. "Camille? Hi, sweetheart." His voice was warm, slightly tired. I could tell he'd been working up the courage to call. "We never fought. Not really. We just paused too long between conversations." "How are you?" he asked. "I'm not prying. Are you okay?" "I'm okay, Dad. Working, living, even smiling, sometimes." He chuckled. Soft and real. That same laugh from our kitchen table, when Mom would bring out the apple tart and we'd fake fight over the last piece. "You know," he said, "your sister won her school writing contest. She wrote a story about you, really. Only in it, you were an astronaut." He laughed again. "She named the main character Comet K, said, 'My sister's not a star. She's a comet, too bright to stay. But no one forgets her.'" I smiled. A tightness rose in my throat. I'd missed so much. "We were thinking, Mom's birthday is on the 24th. It's a Saturday. Nothing fancy. Just family. Maybe you could come?" He didn't push. He knew how I handled pressure. He just left the door ajar. "I'll try," I said. "That's all we ask. Just try." A pause. "If you need anything, just tell us. Not to fix it. Just so you don't forget you have us." "Thanks, Dad." We said goodbye. Quietly. No drama. I chose a black dress. No neckline. No fuss. Simple. Perfectly cut. The hotel entrance was glowing. People hugging, kissing both cheeks. Laughter, flashes, sparkle. Girard came out to greet me himself, as nothing had happened. His face wore the same old smile, just a half-tone too false. "Camille, we're truly glad to see you." "I see that," I said, and didn't ask whether it was me he was glad to see, or his conscience. Somewhere in the middle of the evening, the ceremony began. Girard took the stage. Under the spotlight, he looked almost transparent. "Our next award is for outstanding leadership and lasting contribution to the company, even beyond its walls." He looked at me. "Camille Reno." Applause. Some clapped sincerely, some from surprise, some out of fear. I stood up, slowly, not like a star, like someone who walked barefoot across ice and didn't fall through. I didn't beam, just nodded. The microphone was warm from others' words. "Thank you," This was unexpected, but not undeserved. I looked out into the crowd. I recognized many faces, and I recognized myself. The one who was once too afraid to take the first step. But now, everything was different. Chapter 8. I finally said it out loud. The microphone trembled in my hand, but not from fear, from silence. The hall held its breath, like a field before a storm. I looked out at the rows of faces, familiar ones, former ones, strangers, and at him, Gerard. He wore his usual relaxed smile, but his fingers gripped the glass so hard the knuckles whitened. "Thank you for the award," I began. Not because I expected it, but because now I know for certain I don't have to wait for recognition or for permission. I paused, softly, not theatrically, humanly. Here, within these walls, I left a lot. Time, energy, decisions that cost me more than salary, and silence. Yes. I was silent for a long time. Somebody coughed in the audience, someone else looked away. I was the one they called the dependable one. That meant convenient, predictable, compliant. I delivered results, covered others' mistakes, held the fort, even for those who later stabbed me in the back. Pause. But now I want to say, aloud, what I didn't say before. I looked directly at Gerard. A woman who works herself to the bone should not be thankful for crumbs. She is not obliged to explain her feelings, justify her ambition, or choose between her heart and her schedule. I inhaled. The room grew quieter. I'm not angry. I'm not out for vengeance. I'm simply walking away with my head held high. Because I've learned to respect myself, not to fear, not to wait until someone notices, but to act, for myself, and for others. I glanced at Margarita. She nodded, her eyes glistened. That was enough. And finally, I believe that true strength is not about suppressing others. It's about lifting up the ones beside you. Leadership is not a stage. It's a choice. Every day. Choosing to be human. The applause wasn't roaring, but it was real. When I stepped off the stage, Gerard approached quietly. "Camille, if ever you'd like to come back, there will always be a place for you." I looked at him, not with anger, with clarity. I already came back, to myself. I turned and walked away, unhurried, without looking back. At the exit, a colleague waited. We shared a brief smile. No romance, just the acknowledgement of two people who understood the price of freedom. I felt the ring on my finger slide slightly. I caught it between thumb and forefinger and rotated it once, and for the first time in a long time, not from pain. Chapter 9, where the air smells of forest and cinnamon. I stepped out of the hall and felt the air around me was different. Not ceremonial, free. Behind me, spotlights, flashes, polished smiles. Ahead, night, city streets where there are no winners, no losers. My colleague and I walked in silence. There was nothing to say. Everything had already been said. "Shall we go for a drink?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, not tonight." He nodded. Understood. We embraced briefly. Friendly, uncomplicated, no undertones. And I walked on, alone, but not lonely. It was cool outside. I slipped off my heels and walked a few steps barefoot. The heels weren't needed anymore. Funny how such a small detail can become an act of freedom. I walked slowly, and for the first time in a long while. I wasn't rushing. In the taxi, I stared out the window. The city reflected in the glass like an old photograph. Building facades, bridges, the sign of a pharmacy, the blue neon flicker of a bakery, a cafe where someone was just beginning their evening. Everything felt distant, yet familiar. I thought, how many women are riding home right now with empty hands and full heads? too tired to cry, too strong to ask. I was 38. I had built a career, I was known, I was respected. But everything rested on my shoulders, not just reports and KPIs, but the daily choice to be responsible, polite, smiling, pretty, productive, independent, silent, proper. All of that, with a straight spine and a smile in place, even when inside, a storm. They taught us, you can do anything, but forgot to tell us, not everything at once, and not without cost. No one warned that success isn't a summit, it's a compromise, and sometimes a sacrifice. Men aren't asked to choose between family and office, between meeting a child and meeting investors. They're told, good job for trying. We're asked, are you sure you can handle it? I remembered myself in so many moments, with the test in the metro, with the headache in the office, with a smile at a meeting after a sleepless night, with the ring clenched in my fist when no one was looking. I remembered Laurent, his silence when he realized I wouldn't come, his face on the bench when he told me he was letting go. Back then, I thought I'd won, but actually, I'd lost. I remembered Grandma's letter, how its words glowed even in the darkness, and the ring, small, warm, eternal. It was still on my finger, not as a reminder of pain, but as an anchor, as warmth. And suddenly, it became so clear. True revenge isn't proving something. It's not outshine. It's not outdo. It's stopped playing. I told the driver to stop by a little shop, old-fashioned, in the old quarter, with wooden shelves, soft light, and the faint scent of lavender soap, as though caught between summer and childhood. I wandered between the displays. Jars of jam, candles scented like honey and jasmine, wool throws, hand-painted porcelain mugs inscribed, "My family, my home." I chose 2 gifts, a set of handmade candles in glass cubes for my mom. They smelled of baked apple and cinnamon, and a woolen throw made of sheep's wool with embroidered flowers for my dad. Warm, heavy, in a forest green hue. Something you could drape over your lap in an armchair and read, like you used to. For my sister, I bought a notebook. Small, with a fabric cover, embroidered with a comet. On the first page, I quietly wrote, "Write how you want. Dream how you can. I'm here." At the register, I spotted a figurine, a little wooden horse on wheels. It was funny, a little askew, as though it was grinning. I added it to my purchase. Didn't know who I'd give it to. Just felt like it should ride with me. On the train, I looked out the window. The trees fluttered past like frames from an old film. I held the box on my lap, and in my fingers, the ring. Now I turned it not from pain, but from gratitude, for the journey, for me. The train moved slowly. Each station brought me not just closer to a place, but to people, to them, to my family, to voices, to the smell of apple tart, to my sister's laugh, to Mom's slippers by the door, to Dad's shirt that smelled of tobacco and coffee. On the porch, my sister sat, in pajamas with rabbits, a book on her lap. "You came back?" she asked without looking up. "Do you think that's me?" I replied. "No, a comet doesn't return, but sometimes it lands on a bench." I laughed, quietly, with relief. When I stepped inside, Mom opened the door. In her eyes, there was no reproach, no surprise, only warmth. "You're here," she said. "I'm home," I answered. And for the first time in a long time, it was true. Chapter 10, A Letter to You. If you've listened this far, thank you. I don't know who you are, where you live, how old you are, or what you believe in. But if you're listening, it means that, in some way, you and I are alike. You might be younger, or like me, you never mention your age. You might just be starting out, or you might have already fallen and risen again. You might be leading projects, changing diapers, discovering yourself in a new city, or inside yourself. It doesn't matter. This letter is for you. I'm speaking to you the way I never spoke to my little sister. As if you're sitting next to me, barefoot, with a cup of hot tea, waiting not for advice, but for truth. I want to say, you have the right to be behind, to be tired, to doubt, to want more, and, at the same time, to simply want to be. You have the right to make mistakes, to return, to change your mind, to walk away, to forgive yourself, to begin again. Don't let anyone convince you that you must always be strong, or always be soft, or always be right. You are not a slide in a presentation. You are alive. Alive means complicated, contradictory, real. Once, I remained silent. I believed that if I was good, diligent, convenient, I'd be seen, valued, loved. But the truth is, being good isn't enough. You must be yourself. Even if that's awkward, even if it means losing approval, to keep yourself. You don't have to be a hero, but if one day you want to be, let it be for yourself, not to prove, but to choose. Choose you. I don't want you to repeat my mistakes. I don't want you sitting alone in the office after a clinic, or crying in the kitchen with a letter in your hand. That came too late. I don't want you thinking success is worth it. It's not. And you shouldn't be afraid to dream, to act, to build, to fight. You have a right to your place, to your truth, to your pace. And if one day it becomes heavy, please speak, write, share. We have stayed silent too long. It's time to learn to hear each other and to say to one another, I felt that too. I didn't know. I was afraid. But I found my way. You will. Absolutely. And if you already found it, tell it. Tell others, not for likes, not for applause, but so that someone sitting in the dark suddenly realizes he is not alone. She is not alone. We are not alone. And that is victory already. Take care of yourself. With love, Camille.